Hey guys, what's up? This is Mitchell Kilkenny, TPEP coordinator for Douglas County, here with DCSmokeFree, and today we are going to do a React video, episode 2. Okay, so this video is called Electronic Cigarettes and Vaping by UCLA. So cool, so hopefully it should be good. Hopefully it should be good. I'm sure it'll be great. From an accredited U.S. medical school. Oh, and this was produced 7 years ago, so it's even an older one. So let's see if it still lives up to its name. Or still stands the test of time. It begins with you, UCLA. It's true. It does begin with you.
People have been smoking for at least 7,000 years, but it wasn't until the 1800s that cigarettes became the smoke of choice, after machines were developed to mass produce them. 200 years later, in 2003, the electronic cigarette was invented in China, and since then the use of e-cigarettes, also called vaping.
Okay, so here is the first thing that may be contradicting to the video. Most people think that e-cigarettes were invented in China in 2003 as a way to sort of cut down on cigarette smoking and have a better option for people who are nicotine addicted. However, as we discussed with Dr. Stanton Glantz, we found out that, or he reported that in these confidential tobacco company documents, Philip Morris had actually built and designed e-cigarettes as early as the 1980s. They just never brought them to market because of certain political reasons. And so these things have been around for a while, maybe not actually in the market, but the first time they went to market was around 2003 in China. And now today, actually, most e-cigarettes are created in China. And if you want to learn more about that, I did a great podcast with the FDA, director for Center of Tobacco Products with Brian King, and he talks about how, again, most e-cigarettes are actually built in China, and oftentimes these are American companies. These aren't Chinese companies, these are American companies having these products built in China and shipped to the US. Also, if you didn't know, most e-cigarettes are actually not allowed. Like, they're not FDA approved. There's very few e-cigarettes that are approved. I think link down in the description is all of the e-cigarettes that are actually FDA approved for commercial use. And so you can check that out and see if maybe, if you're a vapor out there, if you know a vapor, see if it actually is FDA approved, because chances are it's probably not.
E-cigarettes are electronic devices that vaporize a flavored liquid. They all used to look...
Okay, and this is another one, sorry, a little thing. Electronic cigarettes do vaporize. There's some doctors out there or prevention experts out there who would actually say they don't aerosolize, or they don't vaporize liquid, they aerosolize them, because they're not really vapor. So vapor is the reason they don't want to say vapor is because there's a big misconception that vapes have water in them, and that when you heat them up, you have just water vapor. And so somehow if it's water vapor, it's now safe. And that was a misconception probably started by the tobacco industry.
But now they come in many shapes and sizes. Many look like pens or small boxes called mods. What they all have in common is, 1, a power source. Usually.
So why did e-cigarettes change in size and shape? And the answer was because there's such a bad rap on cigarettes. We know cigarettes are bad. We know cigarettes are harmful. That if you have a device that looks like a cigarette, which originally was supposed to be to help people who are smoking cigarettes quit, so they wanted a device that looked very similar to a cigarette, so it felt the same, it looked the same, and even though the nicotine delivery system was different, everything else was the same, and so hopefully that would satisfy those urges, those cravings. However, something interesting here that I want to point out is the reason why they look so different from each other. Like, why do some of them look like cigarettes? Why do some of them look more unique? Why do some of them look a little bit different? And really the main reason we think this is caused is because vape companies wanted to distinguish themselves from cigarettes. Most people know that cigarettes are bad. Like, that's, if you ask anybody, 99 people out of 100 are going to be like, yep, cigarettes are not particularly good for you, right? They have negative health consequences. And so when you have a product that looks like a cigarette, it's almost called a cigarette with the exception of the letter E, they are going to get kind of some of that negative publicity, that negative stigma around cigarettes is also going to rub off on e-cigarettes.
Liquid creates a cloud of vapor that looks like smoke, but without a lot of the lethal components contained in tobacco smoke.
I don't know if that's quite true. So the thought behind vapes is that they have an atomizer that heats this e-liquid, and this e-liquid is, aerosolized at a hotter temperature, hopefully burning off a lot of the worst chemicals. When we look between cigarettes and e-cigarettes, often we find that e-cigarettes do have less chemicals than traditional tobacco and traditional cigarettes. However, there's still there's almost 2,000 chemicals in these things. A lot of these things a lot of them are not good for you, including nicotine. And the more research we do, the more harms we're finding about this. So, cigarettes have been around a long time. We've done a lot of studies. We know how harmful these things are. And we've been studying e-cigarettes for about 20 years now. And the more we learn, the worse it gets.
Many people assume e-cigarettes are safer than traditional cigarettes because they don't burn anything or create tar in your lungs. But it took almost 7,000 years for humans to realize that tobacco causes lung cancer, throat and mouth cancer, causes heart attacks and strokes, and damages the lungs. E-cigs, meanwhile, have only been around a little over a decade, so there just hasn't been enough time to figure out what effects they'll have on your body.
So again, 7 years ago, this video is probably pretty smart. We've learned that e-cigarettes, polyethylene glycol, vegetable glycerin, likely increase the rate at which you get cancer. We learned about popcorn lung, diacetyl. We learned about many different chemicals in there that are harm causing. Things like Valley, vitamin E acetate, these flavorings. We learned that the longer they sit on the shelves, the more toxic they become. So in 7 years, we've come a long way with the amount of evidence that suggests vaping is very, very harmful.
We do know that e-cigarettes deliver nicotine just like the traditional cigarettes, causing increased heart rate and blood pressure. Nicotine also has powerful effects on the brain.
Also, the type of nicotine has changed in the last 7 years. So from traditional nicotine to nicotine salts. So that's one of the big ones as well.
It releases rewarding neurotransmitters in the brain, like dopamine, and changes brain chemistry. It is a stimulant, making people feel more alert, but when it goes away, people crave it even more. It can interfere with the body's own natural ability to make dopamine, and soon the user needs nicotine just to feel normal. The developing brain of teenagers is the most vulnerable to these effects. The powerful addictive nature of nicotine is so high that it's comparable to heroin and cocaine. Besides nicotine, e-cigarettes contain chemical solvents.
Yeah, so that is true. So nicotine really can be comparable to the addictive effects of something like cocaine or heroin because it is very, very addictive. I work with a lot of patients who are trying to quit nicotine and also trying to quit other drugs. And they have told me almost unanimously that they are able to quit heroin, they are able to quit fentanyl, they are able to quit cocaine and other drugs. But the one drug they were never able to quit was nicotine.
When heated very high by some of the new e-cigarette devices, these solvents can be transformed into formaldehyde, which is a carcinogen. It causes cancer. These observations are concerning, but we really do not know what the long-term effects from inhaling these chemicals into your lungs will be. E-cigs contain many other chemicals to generate enticing flavors. In fact, there are almost 8,000 different flavors available today, so we don't know very much about many of them.
There's a few main things, the core makeup of e-cigarettes, and then they add all these flavorants. So what do the flavorants do? Well, we're not sure, right? We haven't heated every single possible flavorant you could use. Look at it under, in a NMR machine, and then be like, okay, what does this do? How does it affect human physiology, human chemistry? And then let's do that for 20 years on a human body and let's see what happens. So we don't have the data to be like, this is exactly what's going to happen. But again, the more we learn, and what we've learned over the past 20 years, is nothing. It's never been like, wow, these things are so good for you. It's always been, well, more and more harmful.
We do know that some of the butter flavorings contain diacetyl, which is famous for causing popcorn lung. Popcorn lung is a disease called bronchiolitis obliterans, which is basically an irreversible scarring and destruction of the delicate lung tissue that can kill you. Strawberry and other healthy-sounding fruit flavors have been found to be cytotoxic and potentially cancer-causing as well.
So cytotoxic just means that it's toxic to cells. Cyto.
Vaping devices, or specifically the lithium batteries inside them, may explode unpredictably. Although uncommon, this happens frequently enough that e-cigarettes have been banned from luggage on airplanes. Unpredictable explosions have occurred in people's faces and mouths and resulted in serious injuries, including blindness. With these potential risks of e-cigarettes, the addictive nicotine, the exploding batteries, the carcinogenic liquids, why would any company want you to use them?
That is a real problem. So these lithium-ion batteries can explode. Oftentimes, they're made cheaply, not particularly good for you. We haven't seen that many. Actually, the real problem that we're having is the disposal of these things. So there's a couple laws that went into place that made the production of just like throwaway, disposable vapes more prevalent. And so when we're seeing these disposable vapes, they go to the landfill compacts these things. We're getting explosions, getting fires, all that kind of stuff. These things are really, really hard to break down. They're hard to recycle. It's a really big pollutant to the environment. So, if you care for the environment, it's something that you would, consider. Even today, we have experts come in to tell us how to take care of these things, and these experts really aren't even sure the best way to recycle these things. And so the question is, who's going to bear that cost for recycling all this? Is it going to be taxpayers? I certainly hope not. Is it going to be the people who buy the vapes? Certainly hope not. Hopefully we can hold the companies who produce these things responsible, because they know the product. They built the product the way it was. They could at least build it in a way that's more environmentally friendly and not so much of a pollutant to the environment.
Sales of e-cigarettes approach $8 billion per year and are increasing. The truth is, tobacco cigarettes kill about 50% of people who use them. So tobacco companies, known as big tobacco...
That's a lot. That's a lot of people. These are not fun deaths. I mean, not that any death is fun, but these are, you're not growing old and your body's naturally giving out. These are deaths that are premature. The last few years of your life are not very fun. Like, you're hospitalized, or you don't feel good, you can't breathe, heart disease is a real thing, arteries clogged is a real thing. All these things are really not good. And so, while it may be fun and cool when you're young, as you get older and as you experience all these side effects and all these years and years of bodily harm and injury, you're feeling the effects and you're really questioning those decisions. And again, it's not your fault. I get it. It's not anyone's fault. Hopefully, I'm here to sort of help educate, provide some awareness, and help the next generation to not start this next generation of heart disease and cancer and all of these preventable deaths.
Tobacco need to keep recruiting young people to become addicted in order to stay in business. Here are some actual documented quotes from tobacco executives. "We don't smoke that shit. We just sell it. We reserve the right to smoke for the young, the poor, and the stupid. The base of our business is the high school student. The fragile self-image of the young person needs all the support it can get. Smoking may appear to enhance that self-image. Studies show that when people start to smoke in their teens, they become addicted and stay smokers as they grow older, even those who swear they will never become addicted. Many of the same strategies that big tobacco..."
Yeah, that's very true. Actually, when we look at studies of young people and of adults, and when they tried smoking versus how long they were addicted for, well, we find that students who started in middle school, high school, tend to stay addicted their entire life. But we find that people who typically graduate through high school, and really to the age of 25, but generally if they make it through high school, graduate high school without ever trying this stuff, they typically tend not to become addicted later on. Even if they try these substances as when they're older, they don't become addicted to these things. There's a few exceptions with if you work in a really stressful job. So for example, if you're in the military, like a police officer or, law enforcement, and sometimes like the ambulance stuff. When you work in these really, really stressful positions, oftentimes we see higher rates of tobacco use. And oftentimes it just has to do with the effects nicotine have. Stimulants, if you're up really late at night, a stimulant can help you. If you deal with a lot of stress, again, nicotine reduces temporary stressful situations. Again, not good in the long term, but in the short term, there are some small beneficial effects, and that's really what the tobacco companies rely on with this drug. And so if you're in those positions, you're at a much higher risk, even if you make it through high school, just with the occupation you have. And so it's really good to reach out and find other sources of how to deal with that stress, how to deal with those late nights, other than nicotine. That's not gonna be harmful for you.
Used to hook your grandparents into smoking tobacco cigarettes have simply been modified and are being used today with an e-cig in place of a tobacco cig. E-cigarettes come in candy and dessert.
Yeah, and that's one of the things is that public health in general has done a really, really good job of reducing the amount of cigarette use. And so again, when we look at youth who use cigarettes today, it's like less than 3%. It is less than 3%. If you're a business owner and you want to make a lot of money and you want to make money for your entire life, you should target young kids. And so they use predatory tactics in order to recruit kids to purchase these products, to get them addicted. And now they have a lifelong customer for this next generation.
Dessert flavors like Skittles, gummy bears, and vanilla cupcake, directly aimed at teens. Ads always show thin, beautiful people vaping. Even the strategic use of humor is being successfully used to get customers on their side.
Yeah, I think that was a really satisfying video. So some of the things are still pretty good. We know more information today than we did back then. But I really like the ending of we're all human. We all make mistakes. We all have personal choices. And everyone is entitled to their own personal choice. Just make sure you have all the facts before you pick those things. The one thing that I hate the most is that oftentimes young kids think they are making their own decisions when the reality is they're being manipulated by someone else or by a group of people or by big tobacco. If you have, friends or family or people out there who have been manipulated, let us know in the comments about that situation and what that was like for you. Because I know how hard it is for me, so I can only imagine what you may have gone through. Okay, so this is a video about vaping is more harmful than you think. 4 years ago. Let's see it.
Have recently become popularized among adults and young adults because they are thought to be a healthier alternative to smoking marijuana and traditional cigarettes. But is this claim true? Let's find out. To start, what are e-cigarettes anyways? E-cigarettes are battery-operated vaporizers that simulate smoking cigarettes but without burning tobacco. There are 3 main types of vapes available. These include nicotine vapes, which are the most common and associated with brands like Juul, CBD vapes, which do not get a person high but simply deliver the healing properties of marijuana, and THC vapes, which are a discreet way for people to get high.
I have not seen very many CBD vapes recently, so I don't know a lot about that. My area of expertise is really nicotine, but yes, there are other types of vape devices out there. They put other types of chemicals in them. In fact, there are even more than this today. So we've seen things like caffeine vapes and melatonin vapes, and there's other stuff out there, these other products, and a lot of them are just trying to jump on the bandwagon of people want to inhale stuff. But again, your lungs are not meant to inhale all these chemicals. When you're not in a forest fire, or if you're just around a campfire, you're inhaling carcinogens, you're inhaling smoke, which is not good for your lungs. Now, a very small amount your lungs can handle. We can clear that out. That's okay. It's fine. Like, our lungs can take care of a very small amount. But when we're constantly inhaling this stuff, when we're taking puff after puff, hit after hit, we are causing damage.
The device features a replaceable inhaler cartridge called the atomizer, which is filled with an e-liquid consisting of vegetable glycerin, polyethylene glycol, water, flavoring, and one of either nicotine, THC oil, or CBD oil.
We broke these things apart. We ran them through the NMR machine. We did not really see any water, but we did see vegetable glycerin and polyethylene glycol, which are really the carrier liquid. However, I don't see nicotine here, so there is nicotine in there as well.
Of either nicotine, THC oil, or CBD oil. With every inhalation, the vape.
Also, so this isn't an all-inclusive list. So yeah, vegetable glycerin, polyethylene glycol, nicotine, some sort of flavoring is kind of the main core ingredients that we see when you put them into the liquid. Now, generally, you have a lot of other chemicals. The flavoring is going to have a lot of chemicals. There's new studies on vegetable glycerin and polyethylene glycol that says these things don't cause cancer, but they do increase the rate at which, if you have cancer, how fast it metastasizes, how fast it grows, all of these things. Generally, flavoring is fine to eat. You can eat most things. Your stomach is really, really strong, but your lungs are not that strong. Your lungs can't handle flavorings. They can't handle diacetyl. They can't handle harmful chemicals.
THC oil or CBD oil. With every inhalation, the vaporizer heats a small amount of the e-liquid below its combustion point, which turns it into a vapor and is taken into the user's mouth. Since this technology does not burn anything, it is thought that the vapor does not contain the dangerous carcinogens that are found in cigarettes. However, the FDA found that the vapor still contains some carcinogens and other toxic chemicals, but to a lesser extent.
When you heat things at a higher temperature, you still get lots and lots of chemicals that are harmful, but maybe less of these and also different chemicals than you find in a traditional cigarette.
The short-term effects of vaping can include chest pain, vomiting, shortness of breath, and coughing.
I haven't seen a lot of chest pain, but a lot of that has to do with nicotine as a stimulant. right? So it's going to have increased heart rate. Vomiting maybe can be seen if you have nicotine poisoning, so you ingest too much all at once. Shortness of breath, just from the inhalation of this smoke, is not particularly good, so you affect your lungs right away.
When the vapor enters your lungs, you become exposed to carcinogens like formaldehyde and acrolein, as well as metals such as nickel, tin, and aluminum, and many other contaminants. These toxic chemicals irritate the lungs and can cause lung disease, lung cancer, and even death. Popcorn lung is a life-threatening lung disease that results in the scarring and narrowing of the airways in the lungs and can result because of vaping. The disease is linked to a toxic chemical called diacetyl that was found in 92% of the e-cigarettes studied. Vaping can also cause the narrowing and blocking of
Yeah, so diacetyl is this compound that has the taste of sort of butter. Actually, they found about popcorn lung, also known as bronchiolitis obliterans, because of a microwave popcorn facility when the workers were all getting this lung disease, and they found that it was the chemical diacetyl.
Blood vessels, which increases the risk of heart attacks and strokes. Vaping can also cause permanent damage to the developing teenage brain and cause reduced impulse control, cognitive behavior problems, affect memory and concentration, and cause mood swings. There have even been cases where e-cigarettes have exploded in the mouths or hands of individuals. The first death from a vaping-related illness was reported on August 23, 2019 in Illinois. Since then, thousands of people have been hospitalized and some have even died due to the illness that has now been named E-Valley for e-cigarette or vaping-associated lung injury. The exact cause of this injury is still unknown. However, one current belief is that the injuries may be due to inhaling vicious oils such as vitamin E acetate, which essentially coats the lungs. The alveoli in the lungs get covered in oil and can't properly exchange oxygen or carbon dioxide with the neighboring blood vessels. The lungs then become inflamed as they...
Yeah, so this goes to show again that all of these chemicals, especially flavorings, we can eat them and it doesn't really cause much harm. But when you put unknown things in the lungs, our lungs can't process these the same way our stomachs can.
They try to get rid of this oil, which can result in respiratory failure. It's important to note that electronic cigarettes are just as addictive as traditional ones, and therefore should not be used as a way to quit smoking. Many e-cigarette users get even more nicotine than they would from a tobacco product. This is because you can buy extra strength cartridges, which have a higher concentration of nicotine, or you can increase the e-cigarette voltage to get a greater hit of the substance. There is still a lot that we don't know about the health effects associated with vaping. However, what we do know is that vaping is not FDA approved, and there is no scientific evidence that strongly supports that vaping is better than smoking. If you feel the urge to vape, try these things instead. Choose sugar-free gum, drink water, try yoga or meditation, exercise, or keep yourself busy with a hobby, like solving a puzzle. You can also talk to a doctor about different cessation methods available, or you can call 1-800-QUIT-NOW to talk with a cessation counselor.
I think all in all, it's a pretty good video. I think a little bit dated, some different unique little things in there we talked about, but all in all, it's pretty good.
Here's how vaping works and how to quit in under 1 minute. Every time you consume nicotine, nicotine binds to the nicotine receptors in your brain. When these receptors become depleted of nicotine after about half an hour since your last hit, you start to develop a craving. That craving is a withdrawal symptom. That craving also increases stress. So then you go take another hit of nicotine and you suddenly feel a level of stress relief. Nicotine didn't relieve the stress aside from the stress that was created by the craving since your last hit. What you have to realize is this is a very unreasonable thing.
It's a loop.
Addiction is unreasonable. And the best way to quit is to stop negotiating or trying to reason with those cravings. You can't reason with something that is completely unreasonable. The best thing to do is just here's how vaping works.
Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting little short. Yeah, I think a lot of people have their own unique way on how they want to quit. Quitting is a very difficult thing to do, and so it's good to have different ways to think about it. Oftentimes in our quit classes, we use lots of different evidence-based approaches. We have, different mindsets, and oftentimes it takes more than one attempt. Actually, most of the time it takes more than one attempt to quit. But if you quit enough, if you give it enough time and enough effort, most people will quit. You just have to give it enough quit attempts, enough serious quit attempts. And I think I have a math degree and I work this out mathematically, that if you quit a certain amount of times, you are almost guaranteed to quit nicotine. But you have to try hard enough, and not necessarily just trying hard enough. It's just getting enough quit attempts in with different resources, different methods to quit, and eventually you shall be successful.
How does vaping compare to regular old cigarette smoking or smoking tobacco? There is a general consensus in the medical community that if you had to pick between the two, smoking is worse than vaping. Now, granted, we have a heck of a lot more data on cigarette smoking and its long-term effects when we compare it to vaping. We don't have a lot of long-term studies because it's such a new thing, and we're still even trying to figure out the exact mechanism of how vitamin E acetate and THC gets involved in EVALI and those symptoms.
Yeah, okay, so interesting little short there. We talked a little bit about EVALI, and yeah, we know that EVALI is probably caused by vitamin E acetate. I think the last video sort of talked about that a little bit more, and it's pretty well done. Irritates the lungs, coats the lungs, and you get lung damage, lung failure. The truth is we have more research than we ever have before today about vaping, and everything that we find about it is not particularly good. We have not found really anything about benefits to vaping.
Vaping is so addictive. It's a mutagen. It mutates the genes of cells. It mutates the genes of rapidly dividing cells most. So breast cancers, ovarian cancers. It is so clear that you're introducing a laundry list of toxins to the lungs, and they're getting into the bloodstream, and there are a number of them that cross the blood-brain barrier. Vaping is so addictive.
Yeah, so again, this short, vaping is extremely addictive. There are a ton of chemicals in it. While it may not cause cancer, potentially could cause cancer, we still don't know. We don't have all the research back yet. It definitely speeds up the process of cancer. And we have studies that show that. There's a lot of harms in vaping. It's not, we want people to know that vaping is not safe. This is not a safe thing. There is no safe dose of nicotine. There is no safe dose of vaping, and there's no safe dose of cigarettes in general. All of these things are lethal and will kill you given enough time. If you found this maybe somewhat entertaining, go ahead and give us a like, thumbs up, and maybe subscribe if you would like. For now, I think that's it. So we're going to end this React series. So again, my name is Mitchell Kilkenny, tobacco prevention expert here in Douglas County and DC Smoke Free. And we will catch you next time.